Hello, friends, and happy Halloween. We're here today to discuss scary stuff. We're not really sure what we're going to discuss, but we'll find out here in a minute. In the meantime, Susana, will you start us off with an introduction, please?
Hello, my name is Susana Imaginário. I write mythological fantasy. And I have a YouTube channel as well called Name of the Weird. And I'm not sure how I feel about horror.
We'll get into that. And Jose.
Hi, I'm Jose. I run the Jose's Amazing Worlds YouTube channel, and I have actually written 2 horror anthologies of short stories. So I quite like the genre, although I've got some opinions about it.
Right on. Okay. So we'll start. Susana, we know that you're notoriously not a huge fan of horror. And so what is it about horror that just doesn't scare you, doesn't get you interested in it?
Well, mostly I think the name or the term, because I do like horror. For me, I'd call it fantasy. What I don't like is torture porn. But I like what most people consider to be horror stories, but they're just a little bit more intense than usual.
What are some examples of stories or movies or books that you do enjoy that's in that genre?
Well, Alien, for example, something with a little bit more horror. Recently watched Snow White, A Tale of Horror, more or less. Now they all disappeared from my mind. But for example, things like Ghostbusters I would not call horror, or even just Sleepy Hollow. No, I know I wouldn't call horror. It doesn't scare me, so I don't call horror, if that makes sense. I find it more comical than scary.
And Jose?
Running out of examples here.
And Jose, it'll come to us. But Jose, you've written 2 anthologies. What is it? What do you like and dislike about the genre?
So I think on the main, so the way I understand horror, the way I interpret it, is getting that feeling of discomfort, of like fear. So I think a bit in line with what Susana was saying, like gore, body horror is not really horror. It's just gruesome. It's just, nasty stuff. That just grosses me out, but it doesn't give me that feeling of unease, that feeling of, being uncomfortable when I switch off the light at night. I like the horror to be a bit more in the mind, a bit more psychological, which I think that's why when you have a horror movie with a monster, the tension works up until the point where you show the monster. The second you show the monster, the horror is gone, and then you are in final boss battle mode, and you lose that element of the tension. I think the tension is the key. So, and I think I'm really sorry. I say this all the time for people that have listened to me say this before, but I think that's why horror works better in short story format than in long book format, because that to maintain that tension over 40, 50 pages is relatively straightforward. Over 300 plus pages, it doesn't really work.
So I think it's safe to say none of us are a fan of slashers.
Well,
no.
I like them. I like those movies. So is it anecdote? Is it story time?
Yeah,
Story time. So when I was at uni in the last century, so I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was at university. So my drinking days were over. So it's like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm at university. And there was the student cinema. And on Wednesdays, they used to do like horror night. It was like a midnight show, and you could go for like £2. And they showed all the classic slasher horrors from the 70s, like Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and all those, Night of the Living Dead, all those classic horror movies. and I started going, and there was this really creepy kid in our hall of residence, mousy ginger hair, glasses, lack of personal hygiene, computer science student, staying in his room all the time. But we found out that he actually liked going to those horror movies. So, fitting the stereotype. It was the only time he would socialize with anyone. And I always felt a little bit uncomfortable walking back along campus with him, like at 2 at night. But yeah, I do like slasher movies. But movies and books work differently. Because you can get cheap scares in movies. You cannot get cheap scares in books.
What about you, Susanna?
Well, I'm books. Yeah, I'm still looking. So I'm still trying to find a book that I find that scares me. Or I mean, many books scare me, but in completely different ways. No, I find it important. Like my husband a while back, because I'm trying to understand this atmosphere that you're supposed to create in a horror story for my own writing. So I've been reading a lot of recommendations, and he recommended me The Willows, and I didn't get it. I was so bored. So why are you making me read this? This is a joke. So yeah, I was having this conversation the other day, and it's like I'm kind of colorblind to the spectrum of emotion that you should feel while reading a horror story. I don't know.
I think it's harder to, like you mentioned, Jose. Yeah, you mentioned the scares are easier in movies but in books you have to set it up. It takes time to set it up.
Yeah, that's right. Like in a movie, you can have a cheap jump scare, like turn the corner, come out of the wardrobe type situation. You cannot create that cheap thrill in a book. It has to work differently. But so, what about you, Steve? What was your? I don't know. What did you find scary?
The psychological horror is probably what I find the scariest. I don't really get into slashers. I think it's kind of like I think for some people it's a comfort thing because they grew up with them or they just like the genre. But I'm not afraid, or it's nothing that I'll remember. I guess it's not memorable. There's certain things that scare you that you'll remember, like even something like Alien. It has much more impact because you don't see the creature, you just see glimpses of it. And like you mentioned, in the slashers, you get full view of the villain or whatever, who the slasher is. And it just get bored. And there's always these convenient things that keep the movie going. And they always do really stupid things for the sake of just to move the plot along. And it's just frustrating. So it's always like dumb college kids or dumb teenagers.
But
I
agree. Like I think like Scream, it's a big hit in the 90s, and it was like this sort of big ode to the classic slasher movie. But I think there are slashers and slashers. So like something like Nightmare on Elm Street, which as a kid did spook me out big time. But then as an adult, I watched that. It's like, yeah, all right. But if I watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that one is got that. It could happen. That could actually be it's got that hint of plausibility, and the view from Europe here is that deep in the south of the U.S. weird stuff happens. That Bayou Southern sort of cult horror thing. Same like you guys have watched Deliverance, the movie?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So again, it's not really a horror movie per se, but again, it's got that hint of degeneration and atrocity that could almost be real. I think that makes it scary. So I think even within the genre, you've got variations.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it's too fantastical, like it's Nightmare on Elm Street, or it's these other elements. I think you have that distance from it, but like you said, with like Texas Chainsaw or Deliverance, that horror feels like it can kind of see that happening. Like there's some places you just don't stop.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true. That's true.
it's not horror. It's just normal life. Just really bad time. Yeah, I think to be horror, it needs monsters. It needs something more supernatural than people. You know, people are scary, but then it's no longer, you know, fantasy. It's just you start thinking about, oh yeah, this could actually happen. Oh no.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can get scared in everyday life. You know, the second you start thinking a little bit too much about things. Like this afternoon, my wife had an incident with our 8-year-old boy. I don't know. I think he was overtired. He was just like not thinking straight. But then my wife starts overreacting and thinking like, oh, what if there's something going on? What if at school, you know, he's really unhappy? What if? And in this day and age of all this mental health awareness that didn't exist when I was a kid, you know, like no one knew. And now, if you just project your mind and start thinking about everything that could go wrong, that's a scary trip. Like real life on a day-to-day basis can be more scary than anything you watch out there. So I think maybe these horror movies can have that sort of cathartic effect of getting that anxiety out of your system or channel it through another way.
We just kind of floating in space, and when you stop to think about it, it's pretty terrifying. So it's just a rock in space.
So I was having this conversation the other day with the fantasy book nerd, and talking about horror. It's going to come up next Saturday. And we were talking about most movies from the 80s and 90s. And I kind of realized that there was a lot of horror movies from back then that was for kids. You know, like Legend, Return to Oz, even Never-Ending Story. It's not exactly a happy tale. It has pretty dark moments. And they were for kids. They were really scary. And these days you don't see it as much so often. So I don't know, you were talking about your son, you know, the concerns about mental health. I wonder if, you know, because there were movies, they were fantasy and they were cautionary tales as well. And they did freak you out. I mean, there's in a safe way to some degree. And I think it's lacking today. Everything is so censored and sanitized and faked. You know, I think you need a little bit of, you know, you need to be scared as a kid, I think, to develop a healthy emotional mental state later on, maybe. Because then everything is scary and everything is a problem and you don't never get that separation. I don't know. Just speculating here. Just something. I couldn't think of any horror movies for kids done in the last 10 years. That were actually scary. Because those movies, they were quite gritty.
Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if those movies were intentionally scary for children, or it's just that sensitivities weren't so accentuated back then. Because I remember watching Dumbo, the original animated movie, and that scene where he gets drunk and he's got that nightmare, that spooked me as a kid. That I found that scary. And like you said, I think the evil witch in Snow White was pretty scary herself as well. So, but I think just people were a bit tougher and rougher 60 years ago.
Yeah, I think the 80s is an interesting period, though. I think because slashers were so popular back then. I think a lot of the franchises, and I wonder different eras of time, what's scary to everyone. So in the 80s we had like the crime waves in the 80s. We had some other things. So I wonder how much of that played into the type of movies or the type of content material or books or whatever that appeal to people at that time. Like why, because we kind of changed gears into other things later. But yeah, it's interesting the different things different generations find scary.
I don't know. Sorry, has there been that tonal shift? I think slasher movies still a thing. I think vampires have sort of died slowly.
Twilight killed him.
The monster genre has also seemed to have died a little bit, and I think we've got more gore, hasn't it? The Saw franchise and things like that. It's kind of, we got to take things further and push the envelope a little bit further. And I don't know, like, have you guys watched the Saw movies?
A couple of them.
Yeah, the first one was amazing, and then yeah, the first
Just
one.
more of the same.
love
You
it.
just got to up the ante.
Perfect. I then stopped around 3. Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
enough.
I think I've watched all of them, but it's very formulaic.
Wow.
But so that's very much in your face splatter. But have you guys watched The Human Centipede?
Unfortunately.
No.
Right, Steve. I married my wife after she made me watch that movie, which goes to show how deep my affection
Oh
for her
God,
goes.
you need to tell that story.
But if you stop to think about it, and the point I was trying to make, that if you stop to think about it, that movie is a lot more what's going on in your head than what you actually seen on the screen.
The first one, yeah. The first one, I think might be a fair assessment.
There's a second.
Yeah, there was like 4 of them, I think.
I refused to watch the other two.
Yeah.
There's a limit. But the first one is all in your mind. They're not showing much. They're not doing really anything there. I think it's the idea and the concept.
Yeah, it's a lot of sounds and a lot of talking about what's going to happen. And you do see them connected, but it's not as graphic, I guess. But you kind of fill in the gaps on what's happening, and it's pretty terrible.
Yeah. I think that's a really good movie because, like I think it's what you said. You are bigging up in your head what is actually happening. I mean, what's happening is horrible, but it's not graphic. It's not gory. It's not visceral. I think it's the idea. I like the way you put it. You're filling in the gaps, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't do it, Susana. Don't do it.
So,
I think, Susana, it could be a rite of passage. You could think about it in those terms.
and I value my time. I don't think I need to watch that. I don't need to fill any gaps. I understand the concept. I'm good.
Yeah, I think that kind of, I think the torture, I guess what most people would consider like torture porn, when it's more in your face and splatter and more graphic. I think like the Saw franchise, I think it falls into the trap that, I'll say trap, but I kind of compared John Wick to it, because the first John Wick, it was new and it was, he's like, he kills a lot of people and it has its charms or whatever. But then as the movies go, it's like, okay, what kind of creative ways can we have him shoot people in the face? And before you know it, it's 4 movies in and it's like, he's shooting people in the face. And it's like, I've seen this like 200 times in the past hour. So they have to keep raising the stakes and making it interesting. And I think that happened to Saw, is they had to keep going more and more and try to outdo themselves and be more disgusting and more, what ways can we kill people? What terrible things we can do to people? So it's just when do you stop and just say, okay, it's run its course and let's move on. I guess when people stop watching them, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think those things are made for pennies, really, and they've got a core audience, isn't it? So you can
Or
run
maybe
them
they
for
are
quite a
catering for a different audience. I mean, I never look at it that way, but the first Saw compared, especially after the third, is a completely different type of movie. You know, it's barely about the characters anymore. There's hardly any suspense. It's just, like I said, coming up with new ways to kill people. And yeah, there's no more plot. There's no story arc that's to speak of. It's just horror scene after horror scene. And I guess that appeals to some people that probably wouldn't like the first one because probably they'll think it was too slow or not gory enough. So maybe that's the evolution of these franchises. They have the fans from the first movie, and then they're just catering for different audiences. The fans go along for as long as they can cope, and they still love the first one. And yeah, in the meantime, it's just coming up with new ways to shoot or to kill or whatever, and that pleases other audiences that are always looking for the next, creative moment of gore.
yeah, I don't know if I don't know if even people who like those movies, even people who go out and see them and they really enjoy them and they collect them or whatever, I don't know how many people would say that they're scary.
They do gross you out. They make you look away, don't they? So, but I think it's whether we are equating the two emotions as being the same, being grossed out and being scared.
Well, apparently they should be part of the same package, according to the definition of horror. It's like scare,
like
shock,
if I watch the Saw
and
movies,
repulse.
Like if I watch Saw, I don't feel scared switching the light off at night, but I do look away from the screen when someone is going to be eviscerated or there's going to be a limb popping out. But not quite the same thing. Sorry, Steve, because you mentioned before, right? You're talking about cultural differences. Sorry, I'm just going to take this off on a tangent. Well, not even a tangent, but so like when you were a kid, and Susana as well, like it's obviously, I don't know in Portugal, but like what did your parents scared you with? So like when I was a kid, it was I don't know how to say in English, el hombre del saco, the man with the bag, that he will come and put you in his bag and carry you away, right? So the boogeyman, it would have been the boogeyman in English, I don't know. But it was
the
man with the sack.
kind of the boogeyman. It's what you tell the kids. We call it papão. Well, they just come in,
you call it what?
Papão. It's silly, but that's what. Even the kids know that it doesn't exist. If they really want to, scare you, they just mention God.
Yeah.
He's always watching, always listening. He knows when you misbehave and he will come and punish you.
It is interesting. So the Papao, is that his name? The boogeyman?
Papao, yeah.
Papao. I think our Papao was probably the Kukui, or I think this is kind of what they refer to him as, like the boogeyman. Other than that, of course, like God or, whoever, Catholics, but lots of guilt. They scared us with lots of guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah.
My grandmother was a pro at that.
Yeah.
She'll make me do my prayers before turning the light off and stuff like that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, you got it worse then. I was spared the praying.
I think, so I was actually thinking about this when I went for a run last night, a couple of nights, whatever. And I was listening to, I recommend it, the Horror Hill podcast. It's all short horror stories narrated, really good production. Really recommend it. There's hundreds of episodes there. And it was a story to do with someone goes to the confession booth for some final confession, whatever. And it made me think about the guilt trip that the Catholic Church puts you in, with the whole notion of, oh, you've been bad, you have to go and tell the priest, you gotta confess your sins. And I think to this day I still carry some sort of guilt in me about the things I may have done as a kid that I had to go and tell the priest about, even though I left the Catholic Church when I was 17. But I think, I suppose it's those formative years and that sort of trauma, so to speak, stays with you for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard to kind of scrub those kind of thoughts away when it's so ingrained in you and you're so impressionable in your younger years. I think it's just kind of sticks around a little bit, even if you don't prescribe to those ideas anymore. It's just kind of there. It's always there in some way.
No, it shapes the mindset, definitely. I still find myself, thinking that I'm to blame for everything. It's always not good enough. Yeah, no, it's set.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's a little crazy how much those things affect us throughout our lives, that we just can't seem to shake it. Maybe there's a way to do it, but if there is a way, let me know. I don't know how to do it. Yeah.
No.
Lots of therapy, probably. No.
Probably, yeah.
Read novels, write them. Oh, so many options.
Yeah. Write some good horror anthologies.
I don't know about good. Just write horror anthologies. That's it. But so because my first one I wrote before my reincarnation, so it was just like Cthulhu Lovecraftian pastiches, set in Spain and stuff like that. But the second one, I remember I was writing it as parenthood was going to become a reality. And I did pour a lot of my fears, my feelings of inadequacy in those stories. And there was a lot of that fear of failing, A, as a husband, B, as a father, C, as someone who is meant to be responsible for... I don't know. I mean, Steve, you got kids, right? Did you feel, as the moment was approaching, like oh my God, like there literally is no manual for this?
No, it's I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Like it's just like this. It's almost too overwhelming to think, because when you stop and think about it, it's like too much. So you just kind of hope it works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those where you, like we talked about, like when you stop and think about everyday life, you just, even just crossing the street or any little simple things, when you think about it, you can just terrify yourself with even the simplest, most mundane things what you do every day. But it is this like larger than life thing. Well, it is a life. So I think the scariest thing is that, like, if I do, what if I do something that really damages them for the rest of their lives? What if I do something, just unintentionally do something? That's so scary. Yeah.
Well, but that's my wife's theory, is that no matter what, we're going to do something that is going to mess up our children, because in trying to avoid whatever mistakes our parents made with us, we will make other ones. Is this like a very negative, sort of gloomy view about parenting? Is that you're going to mess up no matter what you do, and your best hope is that you don't mess up too much.
Yeah.
Other stories.
Yeah.
Parenting.
Yeah. But I also think it's important to remember, like, something that I realized as I got older is I know I was never, I don't hold any animosity towards my parents. I mean, they did the best they could. But I think as you get older, even some sore feelings you had about things that happened, whether it was when you were young or in your older years, you just realize that they're people and they make mistakes. So hopefully that I think you just get to a point where, like, they're human and they made mistakes and you accept it, and we're all, so maybe that's part of the lesson that comes with that, is that, like, one day hopefully they'll grow up and be like, that he wasn't perfect, he did some dumb shit, but he did his best, kind of thing. Like, that's all I can hope for. But
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It is scary though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So stages in life, isn't it? Was scary to you as a 12-year-old, or as a 20-year-old, or as a 40-year-old? Are very, very different things. And I don't know if you get to a point where you're just old enough that you're not scared anymore.
But there are some things you are always scared, and especially not real things or not things that are very likely to happen. Like growing up, I used to live by the sea. I was always afraid. I mean, to this day, I get uncomfortable at the thought of like tsunamis or even just big waves. Or, yeah. So any movie that has a tsunami, that's going to get a reaction from me, even if it's not a horror movie. I think everyone has their little quirks.
So, what about? Because I don't think I've got any. But you know those irrational
Really?
fears that people have about, like, mundane stuff. Like, my wife is quite scared of flying, which is an issue because we have to
Very
fly to the
common.
UK once, twice a year. And over the years, she's got better at it. And now every so often, she will fly on her own with the kids. But when it's takeoff and landing, and during takeoff, she'll be there clutching the sea with her nails white with the pressure, and she's all tense. And if not, she's like digging fingers into my arm, and it's like, no, it's okay. Like, there hasn't been a plane crash in Europe for however many decades, but I don't know. Like, and I don't understand those irrational fears. I've got one of my work colleagues. We were talking about it a couple of days ago, and we live on the beach, or she lives by the sea here in Spain, and she's afraid of not seeing the bottom of the sea. So when she goes to the beach, it's just waist deep. She doesn't want to go any further because she's kind of cope with not seeing the bottom of the sea. Like, and
My
I don't
husband is
understand
the
those
same.
fears.
It doesn't go into deep water. He can swim, but it just if he can't see what's in the water, he won't go in.
How do we feel about those kind of? It's like, fuck off, like, just get on with it. But I don't know. Obviously, that doesn't help anyone.
No, like I said, everyone has these little irrational fears, things, quirks. I mean, I think it's fun. It's fun to learn about them.
I don't know, because I haven't
It's just
found
character.
mine. Maybe I'm yet to discover what my irrational fear is. But I find it curious when I encounter someone that has got things like that.
Do you have
Everyone
one,
has
Susana?
something. Well, I just said the big waves,
Oh yeah, that's right.
pretty much. That the sea is just, I'm just going to drown.
Like I said, I haven't found my paralyzing fear yet. I mean, I don't know. Like, this year, I had almost near-death experience, or could have been quite fatal. To do with I've got like I said, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So earlier this year, when I was driving home after work, I blacked out at the wheel, and then I woke up. I had crashed the car, smashed it against a street light, but luckily nothing happened. I was rushed to the hospital. I was fine. 3 hours later, I was home. But 1 minute before, I would have been on the highway. I could have been, a lot worse. Come April next year, I need to get a car again. And I don't know, if now every time I sit down in front of the steering wheel, on the back of my mind, I'm going to have this, is something going to happen now? Is it stupid of me, or is it, a clever thing of me to carry on driving? My wife doesn't. We live in a small village. We've got 2 kids. It's kind of a necessity to get around. So I don't know if I may discover it next year, maybe.
I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, it sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, broadly speaking.
Yeah, I guess is
Well,
it
I find it
healthy to
very
have?
unlikely
I'm
that
sorry.
it's going to happen again. Also, glitch.
It's like buying tickets to a lottery that you don't want to win.
Do they know what caused it, or what was there a cause, or?
It was an accumulation of factors. I hadn't slept well the night before. I was a little bit stressed. I was kind of short on my I take medication every day, so that morning I had missed it because I had run out, and it was kind of like a perfect storm of factors there. And as I was driving into town in the first roundabout, I blacked out. Next thing I know, the police was pulling me out of the car, and I was put on an ambulance to the hospital. But luckily, nothing happened, other than the car was a write-off. And that was it. And I was back at work 2 days later, so gotta carry on.
That's scary stuff.
Yeah.
If you stop to think about it, which I haven't really allowed myself to, I can talk about it, I can tell you about it, I've talked to people about it, but I haven't stopped to, like I said, project and think about everything that could have gone wrong, because I don't think that's going to benefit anyone. But yeah, if I wanted to have a horror production, I would sit down and start thinking about everything that could have happened. So, on that cheerful note, we conclude that reality is scarier than fiction.
Thinking about what could have happened, it's kind of a waste of time. I understand that you're anxious about what if it could happen again, but what could have happened, let it go. Just be grateful that you're fine. What could have happened doesn't matter.
But no,
just make sure it doesn't happen
absolutely.
again. Take care of yourself.
I'm grateful that was, because I was on my own in the car. I suppose my biggest fear, so to speak, is well, what if I had the kids at the back of the car, or Sarah had been there as well? I sort of don't mind killing myself, but if I have to carry the burden of having had the kids at the back of the car or something like that, it's a very different story. So, yeah, like I said, maybe reality is always scarier than fiction.
Can be, for sure.
And people are scarier than any monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. At work now, well, I suppose in society as well now, there is, I can sense it, particularly the parents of girls, there's a much more heightened fear for the personal safety of girls than there used to be when I was a teenager. And the fear that something may happen to them. Or just in general, I get the feeling that women feel more insecure than they did before, or maybe I'm just more aware of it now than I was 10, 20 years ago. Apparently just by just the fact that men are there, women feel intimidated in environments where I don't think that, I had women tell me that they don't take part in races because there's too many men, and they just don't feel safe taking part in a 10K run or a half marathon because there's too many men around. And I don't know how to take that. I'm just there to run. I'm not there to look at anyone or try to touch anyone. I'm there, So I don't know.
Well, women have never been safe. You're probably more aware of it now because you're a grown man and you are a father than you were when you were a teenager. But I don't think it was safer. It was a bit less alarmist, though. There's a lot of too much exaggeration. I want to say exaggeration, but people get offended a lot easier. They take things the wrong way a lot quicker, and things escalate a lot faster and a lot more now. And I think we were a little bit more conscientious back then. And we were taught to deal with certain situations, to not take risks. And I think women these days are taking a lot more risks, sometimes just to show off. I don't understand. With dating, with partying, I don't know. There's a lot of misjudgment and poor decisions being made. But yeah, as not being comfortable, that's also a personality thing. Speaking for myself, I never had that issue again because I always took precautions, I think.
I guess it also...
Like one of the scariest movies, and now that we're talking about it, that really, really got to me was Irreversible. Like to this day, every time I get into an underpass, I have a little palpitation. I think twice, you know, if I can cross the road, I will cross the road, especially if it's at night. So that stayed with me. And I think in a way, the great thing about that movie is just how realistic it is. It's not horror, that is real life. And yeah.
That is a very...
because I like that there's no cuts. It's brutal because there's no cuts. It's real time. And there's a lot, even in slasher movies or, you know, what is supposed to be scary, there's a lot of fading to black and cuts and you just, leave to your imagination and kind of brush it off. And then suddenly they are in a hospital. You know, that movie is as intense, powerful as it is because it doesn't shy away from showing just how bad things can get.
Yeah, that's a very... It's a long scene. It's very intense, and it doesn't look like actors when you watch that scene of that, even the whole film, but that scene in particular doesn't look like people are acting. That's how it's very effective. It's very hard to watch.
Yeah, I don't know how Monica Bellucci held on for like 8 minutes and probably more takes, but man, the emotional drain, can't imagine. Very good, acting wise.
Yeah, very tough to watch. But yeah, very, very well acted and very effective. Yeah, for sure. Even I think about underpasses when I'm walking somewhere now. Because I think about that scene, and that's how. Yeah, so it's yeah, it's pretty impactful.
I haven't watched that, so I cannot possibly comment. Although I'm guessing what it involves. So
very interesting film too, just as a whole, because it's told. Because the first scene is the last scene, right? We go backwards.
It's like Memento. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like bits and pieces. Yeah, that's a good one. That one Into the Void too.
And how do you feel about the first scene? Out of curiosity.
That was another. That was. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say, but because it's the first couple of minutes, but they walk into two men, or I think it's two. They walk into a club, and there's some shenanigans going on in the club, and it's like an S&M kind of club, I guess, if I remember right. And there's some things going on, and so yeah, it right away it doesn't waste any time. It throws you into it's kind of like, okay, this is going to be something else. Like it's not expect anything kind of thing, because it just starts you off right away. But I think it's meant to make you a little bit uncomfortable and make you feel threatened in a way. Like it makes you like not feel safe, I guess. Yeah. What were your thoughts on that scene?
Oh no, exactly that. The movie as a whole was very well done, because you are already at that level, thinking, oh no, how much worse it's gonna get. You're already so tense because it's one of those scenes that you just wanna please stop now. I don't want to watch anymore. But it's just the beginning, so you keep watching with that sense of dread. Yeah.
Jose is just like, I have no idea what you two are talking about.
I don't want to interrupt the conversation. I'm
It's
happy to listen.
interesting one for sure. But yeah, I think those are. I think like we mentioned, like real life is scarier than. I think what people are capable of is scarier than a monster or a vampire or whatever. But I think, to your point, Jose, about earlier about your accident, I wonder if a little bit of fear is in a way healthy, just because it's good to be afraid at least a little bit of things, just to be, as Susana, you mentioned this earlier about kids and kind of being, a little too safe. Because when we were little, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we watched pretty much anything. But it kind of gives you that, it makes you second guess things a little bit and gives you like I won't say healthy cynicism, but it kind of makes you a little bit, is being a little bit afraid a good thing?
Well,
yeah, of course. Self-preservation.
I read somewhere that like fear is some fears are innate and they are a survival tool. Like instinctively, we are afraid of spiders, snakes, things like that, because throughout millennia, these things can kill you. So when you see a snake or you see a fuck off spider, there's danger there. Even kids are afraid of these things. They're almost innate because we've evolved, by being cautious of them. So yeah, obviously, it seems that fear has got its logical place in the range of human emotions. It serves a purpose, which is self-preservation, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But because we live in, like Susana said, we live in a more sanitized society, we are artificially recreating these emotions that we would have experienced naturally when we came from up the tree, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah.
I guess we probably should have started with this question, but here we celebrate. Well, Halloween it's not a national holiday, but it's kind of a tradition, I guess. Do you where you both live? Do you celebrate anything like a fall type of thing?
You first, Susana, because I'm about to go on a rampage. So
okay,
take it
very
away.
quickly. In Portugal, no, we don't. Maybe in recent years, kids get together as an excuse to dress up and have a party, but no, we don't have Halloween. We masquerade during Carnival in February, which is unfortunate as well. It's always cold. Here, I don't know. Since I moved in the middle of Ireland, no, kids come trick and treat and that's it. So I guess something happens. Yeah. But in Portugal, no.
I loathe it. I despise her with all my heart. I can't stand that we've acquired this Yankee tradition that has got no roots in our culture, and now we have to put up with kids bloody trick-or-treating, knocking on your fucking door. My kids have to go and dress up for school next Tuesday. Why? I'll celebrate Halloween when you Americans go and do a romeria down the Mississippi River or something like that. When you take one of our traditions, I'll take yours on. In the meantime, no thank you. But I can't escape it. It's everywhere now. I have to go now tomorrow. I've got to go on a fucking mission to find pumpkins because the kids want to carve pumpkin. What the fuck? That didn't exist when I was a kid. Like what is in the last 30 years? The whole thing has just degraded into this American assimilation of no, it's wrong. Globalization is wrong in this particular instance. I can't stand it.
No.
Sorry, was that too much? Did I let go too much? I don't like it. We've got our own traditions and things, so. But I suppose, I'm going completely off topic here, but in contraposition to that, when do you guys celebrate Columbus Day?
Don't anymore.
20th. Oh, I see. So, because here on the 12th of October, which is when allegedly he landed in wherever he landed, I think Cuba, one of the islands there. 12th of October, we call it the Dia de la Hispanidad, so it's like Hispanic Day, and it's like a national holiday. Whereas Columbus got this bad rep across the Atlantic, where he's not very well regarded.
Not anymore.
So he is still a national holiday, and you've gone completely the other way with that. So if you can reject Columbus Day, I think we should reject Halloween, and then we call it quits, call it even, and everyone is happy. How about that?
Yeah.
No?
I think,
Right.
yeah, Columbus Day I think it was about 10 years ago or so, they started to kind of support for that day kind of started to wane a little bit, and now it's, they moved the national holiday. They tacked it on to the day after Thanksgiving, which is a whole nother thing. I'm not sure if all of you celebrate, but Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday, so they tacked on the day to a Friday to give everyone a 4-day weekend. Well, people who are able to be off, not everyone can. But yeah, they just moved it around and named it something else.
Like Halloween wasn't a thing when we were kids. It really wasn't. It's something that you saw on ET when you went to the cinema. Oh, look at that, Americans dressing up, going trick or treating. No one did that. And now I think there's even a parade here in my town on Tuesday. So go figure.
I always thought it was
A lot changes in 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought it was a strange thing
Just
because you everyone tells their kids don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from strangers, and then Halloween rolls around, go knock on that stranger's door and ask them for candy. Like what? It's always really even when I was a kid, I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand. Wasn't a fan.
Oh, so I mean, I think obviously still your kids are older than mine, but did you take them?
No, I was one of those party poopers. I would just buy them lots of candy and be like, let's watch movies and hang out and have a good time. And I'll buy you whatever candy you want. And then you can eat whatever. And I'll pay for the dentist bill later. But yeah, it was just, So I think they went to some of the shopping malls and stuff. They have like safer areas for the kids. I think they did that once or twice. But no, I wasn't not a big fan of just knocking on the stranger's door and asking for candy. I don't know. Call me crazy. I don't know. Yeah.
No. A man after my own heart. Yeah. I can see the logic there.
I do like the idea. I do like the fall. I do like fall. So I do like the kind of celebrating fall, but I don't know. It's strange. It's weird to have something in February though, because it'd be cold in February to celebrate the kind of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always the
Depends
best
on where you are,
costumes
I
and
suppose.
always so cold. Because I like to dress up, but yeah, not in the cold.
Right. But there's another element, another aspect where society has gone wrong, and is that every fancy dress for women, you could just add the adjective slutty in front of it, and it will work exactly the same way. Because you buy an outfit as a woman, you go vampire, and it's going to be sexy vampire.
Of course, it's going to be sexy. What sort of vampire is that that's worth dressing up? That it's not a sexy.
No, but it doesn't matter. Because if you go for
it's an excuse
witch,
to
you go for witch.
Sexy witch. Yeah.
But why does it have to be sexy witch? Why can't it just be a witch? Like, why does it have to be the thigh high boots, the miniskirt,
because it's fun.
I don't know.
Because we don't get to do it any other day without being judged, and apparently you get judged on Halloween as well.
I don't know. I just don't like her. I just go. It's
But that's a different sort of
probably.
when I dress, my usually go-to costume is like superheroes. Don't ask. And
I think we need to explore this, but we'll leave it for another chat.
but
Yeah.
I don't go, knocking on people's houses and ask for candy. It's guess that's the thing about Halloween. I guess adults stole it for kids a little bit. But that aspect, I know that it's very American and it's very, it's just vanity and silliness. But I had good times in Halloween, so during Halloween, so that's fine. And it's fun to dress up.
What's your go-to
You can wear all the
superhero?
crazy contact lenses and and your fangs. It's great.
Wow.
Sexy fangs.
What's your favorite character to dress up as? Your superhero?
Me. Favorite, I would like to say like Lara Croft. So it's very cold. But I went as a Baroness. I went as what's her name from Underworld. Basically, and anything that requires boots and corsets. It's fine.
No one is surprised. Yes. Okay.
Your estimation of me just went like
Let's get
flat.
back on track. Let's get back on track. Let's just talk about scary shit.
Let's go back to horror. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's.
yeah.
I think those kind of holidays are for as much for the adults as they are the kids, though. Just gotta.
Yeah.
It's, But yeah, I did. I am curious though, like the things that we are afraid of and the things that people say they experience. I think it's heavily influenced by whatever it is that's scary in that culture. Do you guys think the same thing? Because they don't. I don't know anyone who's been afraid of something from another culture. They've experienced something supernatural. They said was a supernatural, and it was from a different culture. It's always something within the kind of the bubble you live in. It's whenever somebody says they experience something, it's always related to other things that they've been told about before, is within that sphere. So.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I
I don't know if it applies. No, definitely. Like before moving to Ireland, my idea of fairies were pretty much the Tinkerbell kind of fairy, and it took me a while to understand why people were so afraid of fairies over here, and I realized that their definition of fairies is completely different, and they are very intimidated by them. Which, I think it's great. So, but so I can't think of an equivalent in Portugal. It must exist, but no. Give me a moment. Jose, do you have fairies in Spain?
I think to quote here. Is there anything particular? Not really, no. But to quote the great H.P. Lovecraft, the greatest fear known to mankind is the fear of the unknown, isn't it? And I think when you are in that situation where you're surrounded by totally strange people or a totally strange environment, it is scary. I experienced that when I first moved to the UK. I was 18 and all of a sudden, slap bang in the middle of a brand new place, surrounded by people that spoke a funky language. That was scary. The first time I went to meet my wife's, or my in-laws basically. So my wife's Nigerian and they live in a primarily black neighborhood in London. I think one time we went to a restaurant and I experienced that otherness because I was the only white person in the whole restaurant, including waiters, waitresses, family, and it's that strange family photo. Like, who's that black guy there? Like, white guy. Sorry, who's that white guy doing there? And feeling for the first time in my life like I was the one sticking out was a little bit. I'm not gonna say scary, but you do feel a bit more self-conscious than I do on my day-to-day life, and maybe that's how my wife has felt all her life, and I've never really been able to understand or relate to that because I've always been in the majority. Whereas when I was in that environment, and you always feel a little bit queasy. But I don't know if you guys have experienced something similar.
Susana?
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of times. Like we went to Kenya last year on safari. Yeah, and it was an education. It was a life-changing experience, and to gain perspective on so many aspects of humanity. So yeah, I understand. I feel completely.
Yeah, I think speaking of the South, there's some times when I've been traveling through there, and when I was younger, we had a road trip. We stopped at this, I don't know, some like Waffle House, like coffee, like a cafe kind of thing. And everyone there was like blonde and blue eyes, and I'm not. So it's just, so everyone turned to look at, but you do get that feeling of, why is everyone staring? Because you feel like you stand out and you start to question everything you do and everything, So yeah, I think everyone in some way, I would imagine, goes through that. I guess if you stay in the same little town or, you don't travel, I guess you don't. But I think if you venture out of your comfort zone, you're bound to be in some kind of situation where you can relate to that feeling of not quite fitting in or not, kind of standing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not that, and it's an irrational fear. It's not grounded on any past experience. It's just not knowing where you stand. It's not knowing what's likely to happen next or what you're likely to find next. I can remember when I visited Istanbul quite a few years ago. I don't know why. So I was staying with a friend, but I think one night I went out by myself, or one afternoon I went by myself and it got dark. And instead of taking the bus, I decided to walk all the way back. And I got stopped and asked for money like 3 times on the way to my mate's flat. And it was like a really sort of, edgy situation where it's like, why have I decided to do this? But you are in Istanbul, it's a completely different culture, it's a completely different surrounding. And it felt really on edge. Whereas when I went to Venice and there was a lot of walking on my own at night, I didn't feel that sense of dread. It just felt a lot safer and a lot more secure.
You probably I think all of us get used to like the cultural norms or the, what's kind of like the, have an expectation of what to expect. Even if you may not have been safer in Vienna, you still had a comfort level with kind of having an expectation of what may lie ahead, where you're a stranger, you're in a different or a newer place, and you don't have that kind of understanding of how things are done or how with the what's accepted and what's not, kind of thing. I don't know if that's
on top of everything. Yeah, because you are the odd one, so everyone is gonna notice you. It's gonna be probably they're not staring at you. They just know you're there because you're different. It's always worse in our heads. But then all adds up with the fact that you don't know or you may not know how to act. Yeah. That is pretty scary, inside.
Big cities I'm not particularly fond of. In spite of having lived in London for however many years, I feel like in my small town here, I just know where it's not okay to go at night, and so long as I'm away from there, I've got no issues being out and about, walking back by myself, going whatever. London, yeah, I'm not okay. I never really enjoyed, taking the last train home or just even around the centre, which is full of tourists. It never felt cool, and I feel the same about Madrid, even though it's about half the size of London. But yeah, big cities I'm not keen on anymore.
No, I had my first panic attack in London. Not the first of many. I've only had a few, thankfully, but I remember that one very clearly. It's just, but I was just smothered in this crowd. In the subway was seriously just a wave of people. I don't like waves, so suddenly I was, instead of water, it was just everyone just, and I freaked out.
Oh, I know that feeling. You catch the 7 o'clock train from Clapham Junction to London Waterloo Station. You're not escaping any armpits, any odor, any. You are in there, in London. You know that. So no, I understand.
Made me think of a talk I had with Nicholas Kotar. He's an author. He's from Russia, but we were talking about how social media and how our brains can't keep up with so many people. And he had mentioned that, big cities are still a new thing to us because we were so used to being in little tribes and little circles and, traveling. And when we did settle, we had our own little tribes and we had our own little small circles. And when we did form bigger cities, we still had the little circles within the bigger cities. And now we're just individuals. A lot of people are just individuals in the bigger city that don't have I think we're still adapting to like a big city, like our brains haven't quite caught up yet on how to, how to kind of just live or be, because we're so used to having things a certain way just as humans.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year I've been struggling with Aristotle's Politics. So I've been reading that book in small chunks. But one of the bits that I found I thoroughly agree with is he mentions at one point that the optimal size of the polis of the city is 50,000 inhabitants, and any more than that, it's just not human anymore. It's just 50,000 people. You can cope, you can organize, you can manage. It sort of makes sense. It's the right size, and you can be involved in the politics and the running of the city because you still feel like you're part of it, and that those things directly matter to you. But any bigger than that, you just get lost. And to me, that sort of made sense when I read it. And I understand, like cities of millions of people, our mind cannot comprehend that amount. And so on. So I take that point. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. I know it's getting late for both of you, but I wanted to ask you both, what's your either the scariest book or scariest movie you've both seen or read? What would you say? Or both?
Jose, you can go first.
Go. Ladies first.
All the movies I've ever watched just suddenly disappeared.
Movie, I don't know. I think probably sort of that I remember having an impact on me. Probably the original Exorcist, the original. Is it 73?
Late 70s maybe. Yeah, I'll look it up.
Yes, something like that. I think that one really did freak me out.
Yeah, 73.
There you go. So as a movie, that one. As a book, I would say it was H.P. Lovecraft's short story. I think it's called The Vault or In the Tomb. I could check it out. But it was one where I finished reading it, and I close the book, switch off the light, and I was like, oh shit, this is not cool. So that really did spook me out. What about music? That's like, when I was a teenager, sort of discovering music, I borrowed from the local library a Black Sabbath record. Having never listened to Black Sabbath, and it was the Live Evil record. It was a live recording, and it's got a song called Black Sabbath. And I was at night in bed, headphones on, listening to that song, and it did scare me. Like the singer, that this maniacal laughter, and the whole song is about being in some sort of black mass with, some sort of dark ritual type thing, and it was scary. Like I got that.
Don't think I've heard that one yet. Yeah.
Songs, no, I don't think any song. Not scary. Some of them just hurt my ears. But no, oh, that's a new one. I don't think I was ever being afraid with song.
But sorry. Go on, Susana.
No, I was going to books. So what about you going to say about the songs?
No, that even in music, the tritone, it since medieval times is being associated with the devil, and when you hear those three notes, it means impending doom. It means impending danger, and you hear different songs with that tritone there, and it is scary. It's like sort of devil's music from the Middle Ages. So there's something about it that does elicit some kind of natural reaction from us.
I know that.
I will have to go and listen. I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. So I'll need to go and research. It'll be interesting though.
Tritones. I have to look that up.
I'll see. Yeah, I'll do a quick search. And I'll put it down in the chat here.
What about you, Susana? What
I guess
books?
we are predisposed to respond to certain sounds a certain way, but how would they incorporate that into music? Anyway, books-wise, so Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, I was very tense reading that book, but I don't think it qualifies. But it just kept getting worse. And but there's one particular scene in the Wisdom of Crowds from Abercrombie, I think so. That I don't know if you read them. Probably. Has anyone not read the book?
It's a.
I have read Wisdom of Crowds, yeah.
Anyway, there's one scene there that also I had to stop and rewind and then read again. I was listening and reading and yeah, that was very tense. And it qualifies as horror because I was biting my nails at that point. Can't think of anything else.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, Wisdom of Crows, I'm kind of halfway through reading Holly Tinsley's first novel, and I'm sorry, Holly, if you're listening, I'll talk to her, but she's not a very nice person. Like that book is quite. It's tough. It's yeah. And it's horrible. Like the way she treats her characters is not very nice. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not scary, but it's like, oh, have some compassion here. Like give him a chance. I don't know. And so the question is, when you write that kind of stuff, right? Like if you write extreme horror, if you write grimdark, if you write that sort of, torture porn, whatever, is that an expression of your mind? Is it saying something about you, or are you fully detached from that? Because you have to operate on a certain level. I don't think your average person sits down and goes, "Oh, I'm just going to write up, extreme horror book." It's not in everyone's mind to do that sort of thing.
It can be. I suppose you always find something to expand, I guess. I don't remember much of the book. I read it a while back. I didn't think it was that scary at all. I kind of had the impression that the thing was a bit forced and by the book. So like purposely, there was stuff there that didn't fit the character or the story. It seemed that was just, insert this for effect. But to judge the author by the stuff we write, it's don't do that. there's from experience, there's a lot in my books that I have no idea where it comes from. Others, I have to study, like for a couple of characters. One is very extroverted, so I had to actually study how to portray an extroverted character. It was tough for me. And one of the villains, because their character is just so despicable, but it's despicable in a way that it's very disagreeable to me as well. But I always try to portray it in a way that it makes sense, that someone else might be reading the character and say, "Oh, no, but he's right." And, so there is a lot of study involved to create that personality, to write those things. It's not a project, or it shouldn't be a projection of your personality.
But don't you think that some degree of self-insertion is unescapable?
Yeah, of course. No, it is completely unescapable. From little things. I mean, it's based on how I think. Not the specific thoughts or opinions or whatever, but the thought pattern is there. You can escape from that. Sometimes you can't escape some bias as well. And self-inserts. Yeah, I mean, I have a character that is a writer, because I knew I had to have a writer character, because I had to have a character I could dump all the little writing frustrations along the way. It's kind of it's my private, joke and enjoyment to have that character. I can, have those little asides that it's almost how I'm thinking, writing that scene, if that makes sense. So yeah, of course, there's a lot of the author in every book.
Yeah, I would imagine at least there's a bit of almost like therapy that goes on, like, therapeutic or catharsis that goes into writing terrible things, or even treating your characters terribly, or I think there's some form of,
No, I don't feel that. I see a lot of authors talking about it, and no, like I don't go out of my way to be mean to my characters. It's just, things happen, but I never felt like that. That's not my intention. I like them confused. That makes sense. I like them to be a little bit out of balance. I write about gods, and I like to kind of bring them down a notch sometimes.
Interesting. Yeah. What about you, Jose? Do you feel like it's almost like therapy, or do you feel a release when you write about terrible stuff?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before, there is an element of I don't know if it's catharsis. I don't know, but there's an element of projection or like sharing, putting on paper my own fears or my own feelings. I think I don't want to call myself. I was going to say, us writers, but I'm not in the same category as Susana at all. But I think there is an element when you write, when I write, that you put on paper your thoughts, your opinions. It's in a way, it's a way to put out there what you're feeling. So like my first novel, without quite realizing, it was sort of an exercise on getting rid of that feeling of loneliness, of being in London for so long and yet so isolated. You're surrounded by people, but I completely failed to develop meaningful relationships with people, even though you are surrounded all the time. And when I wrote my first book, I sort of did a mini printed edition and I gave it to friends and family. And my grandfather said that he couldn't finish reading it because he couldn't bear the thought of realizing how lonely I had been for so many years there. And it was like, oh, so that's what I was trying to do. Like he's the one that made me realize what is it that I was writing about. So I think it's inescapable that as a writer, your personality, what you think is gonna come up somewhere in your book through one character or another. Not necessarily all of them, but there is that. And certainly when I did for sure, all those things, it's all me. It's all me. Yeah.
You have to vary a little bit here. But yeah. You can't escape. Yeah, I was going through my head thinking of all the characters, and I think all of them have something that I can relate to. I mean, you need those bits because it's usually the ones that then you're going to use to delve deep into the character and their motivations. So even if it's just the one thing, I think it's important because otherwise you can't write a character properly. You need to have that focus, that connection. Yes. Yeah, that's what they call the author's voice. The overall. Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, I don't recommend. I recommend writing as an exercise, as a therapeutical exercise, and write your experience, your stories. But if you're going to publish, I really don't recommend putting a lot of yourself in a story, because I think usually that's when problems happen with the bad reviews. People take it personally because it is personal. Write it for yourself. If you're going to put it out there, making it a little bit more fiction, unless you're writing your autobiography, but that's a whole different thing. Then you don't have to justify. You're just telling them. You're just telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, that's a book that I had issues with. The Slob, the infamous Slob, which I keep trying to peddle the 2 copies that I got there. I couldn't finish it, and from the comments that people had left on my channel about that book and other books by the author, again, like, you're going to write something so horrendous and something so nasty. Like, I've only got 2 possible explanations. You're either doing it for shock value, or there's something slightly unhinged up in there. I don't know. But it's got to be that, isn't it? It's got to be one of those 2.
Well, every artist and writer especially, they're all a little bit mad. And, that is known.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, seriously. There's so many cases of mental disorder amongst writers, so many cases of suicide, so many cases of
alcohol abuse,
alcoholism, drug addiction. Clearly we have issues, but that doesn't mean we're bad people.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself.
So what comes first, the mental issues and then the writing, or does the writing cause the mental issues?
You tell me. You just published. Notice any difference? I think you kind of trade. You solve some issues and then you get new ones to deal with.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Well, Suzanne, I know we talked about you've been late for you, and we wanted to about an hour, and we're already an hour and a half. But
no one's called me yet, and I'm enjoying the conversation.
Okay.
So
Don't want to keep you too long.
But I should be able to go soon.
So before we wrap up, though, Suzanne, where can people find you?
I'm pretty much everywhere, but I'm most active on X and Facebook, and of course my YouTube channel, where I ramble a lot.
And I noticed that you have a.
So
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, the handle is not Susana, it's Chronodendron. So
Yeah,
confuses people.
I did notice you're 20 days away from the 365-day challenge. About 20, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like 28, 29. Yeah, it's just a little over a month. I think it was day 335 today. Yeah, it's almost there.
Almost there. Almost there, yeah. But
Life-changing.
it has been. Yeah, it's fun though. It's fun. And
you look at things differently.
You do.
I find myself looking at things in different ways.
Yeah, it's a good exercise. The good creative exercise. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, we're both on Vero. It's a social. It's not very. There's no algorithm. There's no ads. It's just people posting photos. And there's a challenge called the 365-day challenge, when you take a picture every day and you post it. So you have to take a picture every day and post it. So it's a fun thing to do. I think it's fun to challenge yourself. But Jose, where can people find you and your book?
Okay, so no, mostly they can find me on YouTube at Jose's Amazing Worlds. I'm also on the page2in.com forums, and books, they're written in Spanish, so I don't think the target audience is quite here. So for the moment, I just want to keep it on the down low and see how it goes. But Susana did threaten to read one of them, so I don't know.
Yeah, if I can. You didn't seem very enthused with the idea.
I didn't want to subject you to my writing, that's all. I'm concerned for your mental well-being.
Okay. So it would be good to polish my Spanish. So,
okay.
Yeah. I'll give it a try.
Nice. You have to let us know. Yeah, we'll find out what your pen name is, and we'll go read it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks both of you. It was a great conversation, and we have to do it again very soon.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Susana.
Thank you.
We'll talk to everyone very soon.
Bye.
All right.